The Arizona sun hit Fort Lowell like a hammer on an anvil, turning the tarmac into a shimmering lake of heat distortion. At 0600 hours, it was already 92 degrees and climbing. By noon, it would break 110, and anyone stupid enough to touch bare metal would come away with second-degree burns. Staff Sergeant Jordan Cross stood at the edge of the main training yard, watching the advanced leadership course students filter into formation. There were 63 of them. Army, Marine Corps, a handful of Air Force, all prior service NCOs being groomed for bigger responsibilities. They moved with the particular swagger of people who'd already proven themselves once, and figured they had nothing left to learn. Jordan was 27 years old, 5'6", and carried herself with the kind of stillness that most people mistook for shyness. She wore standard OCPs, with no ribbons visible, the sort of field dress where awards weren't displayed. Nothing that screamed operator. Nothing that said she'd spent 18 months embedded with a SEAL task unit in Helmand Province, or that she'd personally breached 14 hostile compounds under fire, or that the platoon chief had started calling her Reaper after she dropped 5 Taliban fighters in a single engagement without breaking stride. Most people looked at Jordan Cross and saw exactly what they wanted to see. A woman who probably worked in logistics or medical. Someone who'd never seen real combat. Someone who didn't belong on a tactical training facility. That was fine with her. She'd learned a long time ago that respect wasn't given freely. It was earned in blood, sweat, and the particular kind of silence that came after proving everyone wrong. Check it out. A voice carried across the formation area, loud enough to be deliberate. They're letting the nurses observe training now? Jordan's eyes tracked toward the source. 3 students stood in a loose cluster near the equipment shed, their body language radiating casual dominance. The speaker was a thick-necked Marine staff sergeant named Vance, prior force recon according to the roster she'd reviewed. 6'2", 220, with the kind of build that came from serious gym time and serious pharmaceutical assistance. His 2 companions, Sergeant Chen, Army Ranger qualified, and Corporal Rodriguez, Marine Infantry with a deployment to Fallujah, laughed on cue. Vance was looking directly at her. Jordan didn't react. She registered the comment the way she'd register wind speed or ambient temperature. Data to be noted, filed away, assessed for tactical significance. She turned her attention back to her tablet, reviewing the training schedule. "Hey," Vance called out, louder now, walking toward her with his entourage in tow. "You lost? Motor pool's on the other side of base. Admin building's that way." He pointed with his thumb, his grin wide and ugly. Jordan looked up, met his eyes. Said nothing. The silence seemed to confuse him. He'd expected something, embarrassment maybe, or defensive anger. He got neither. Just a calm, measuring gaze that lasted exactly 2 seconds before she returned her attention to the tablet. "Strong silent type, huh?" Vance pushed. That's cool. We just want to make sure you're in the right place. This is advanced combat training, not like a yoga retreat or whatever." Chen snickered. Rodriguez looked vaguely uncomfortable, but said nothing. Jordan's finger scrolled through the day's agenda. 0800, equipment issue and safety brief. 0900, live fire CQB scenarios. 1200, force-on-force assessment using simunition marking rounds. "Seriously, though," Vance continued, his tone shifting from mockery to something that pretended to be helpful concern. "If you're looking for the CST liaison office, I think that's over by..." "She's not lost." The voice came from behind them. "Command." Sergeant Major Patricia Orozco, the senior enlisted leader for the training battalion. She was 5'4", 130 pounds, and had been breaking men twice her size for 23 years. Her tone could strip paint. Vance straightened. "Sergeant Major, I was just..." "You were just what, Staff Sergeant? Harassing an instructor?" There was a pause. A long one. "Instructor?" Vance's face went through a fascinating series of expressions. Confusion, disbelief, the beginning of something that might have been embarrassment but wasn't quite willing to commit. "Staff Sergeant Jordan Cross," Orozco said, her voice dropping into that particular register that made smart soldiers shut their mouths and pay attention. "Cultural Support Team Operator. 2 deployments with Naval Special Warfare. Bronze Star with Valor Device. Combat Action Badge. She's here to evaluate your performance and determine whether you belong in this course. She let that hang in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. She'll be observing your training today, and tomorrow she'll be running it. I suggest you unfuck your attitude before then, because if she recommends you for removal from this course, I will personally ensure that recommendation is implemented. Are we clear? Yes, Sergeant Major, Vance managed. His face had gone from confident to ashen in under 10 seconds. Outstanding. Now get your ass to formation before I add counseling statements to your permanent record for being late. Vance and his crew scattered like roaches when the light comes on. Orozco turned to Jordan, her expression softening by exactly 1 degree, from glacial to merely Arctic. Sorry about that. These prior service guys sometimes forget that rank and experience don't always come in the packaging they expect. Jordan shrugged. Not the first time, won't be the last. Probably not, but it's still bullshit, and I won't tolerate it on my base. Orozco paused. You need me to have a word with anyone else? No, ma'am. I'm good. You sure? Because I'm happy to make examples. I'm sure. Jordan powered down her tablet. Besides, talk is cheap. Better to let the work speak. Orozco's mouth quirked into something that might have been a smile, if smiles could carry the weight of 2 decades of institutional bullshit. I like you, Cross. Try not to break too many of my students. No promises, Sergeant Major. Part 2. The Compound. Jordan Cross grew up in rural Wyoming, the daughter of a competitive rifle shooter and a wilderness survival instructor. Her childhood was spent learning to track elk through high country, field dressing game, and putting rounds on target at distances most people couldn't see. Her parents never told her she couldn't do something because she was a girl. They told her to be twice as good as the boys and let the results speak. She enlisted at 19, scored expert on every weapons qualification, and volunteered for the Cultural Support Team program the day it opened to applicants. CST operators were female soldiers, handpicked to deploy with Special Operations units, Delta, Rangers, SEALs, to engage with local women and children in ways male operators couldn't. But the job went far beyond cultural liaison work. Jordan went through selection courses that broke grown men. She learned advanced tactical shooting, close quarters battle, battlefield medicine, explosives, small unit tactics. She failed the first selection, came back and failed the second. The third time, she finished in the top 12%. Her first deployment took her to Helmand Province, embedded with a SEAL task unit running direct action missions against high-value targets. The operators were skeptical at first. A woman on kill or capture missions felt like a liability to some of them. But Jordan didn't ask for acceptance. She performed. She breached doors, pulled security, treated casualties under fire. And when 5 Taliban fighters ambushed their patrol during an extraction, she put them all down in under 15 seconds with her suppressed M4, moving and shooting with a precision that made the assault team leader stop and stare. After that, the platoon chief started calling her Reaper. The name stuck. She came home with 2 bronze stars, one with a V device for valor, a combat action badge, and a reputation that never left the special operations community. But here, surrounded by conventional soldiers who'd never worked with CST operators, none of that mattered. Her record was classified. Her deployments were need to know. Her awards weren't displayed on her field uniform. All they saw was a woman, and in their world, that was enough to dismiss her entirely. Part 3. Equipment issue. The arms room at Fort Lowell was a concrete bunker that smelled like gun oil and testosterone. Jordan stood in line behind 30 other students, waiting to draw training weapons for the day's live-fire exercises. Vance and his crew were 2 stations over, loud and performative. I'm just saying, Vance announced to the room at large. Standards have dropped. They're letting anyone through these courses now. Participation trophy generation bullshit. Affirmative action warfare, Chen added, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Can't hurt anyone's feelings. Everyone gets to play operator. Rodriguez laughed, but it sounded forced. Jordan kept her eyes forward, her expression neutral. She'd heard variations of this speech 100 times. It was background noise, static that didn't deserve a response. The armorer handed her an M4 carbine, a Glock 19, 6 magazines, and a tactical vest. She conducted a functions check on both weapons with practiced efficiency, her movements smooth and automatic. Chamber, bolt, trigger, safety, magazine well, sights. Perfect. She slung the rifle and moved toward the ammunition point. Hey, ma'am? Jordan turned. The armorer, a young specialist who looked about 19, was holding out a different vest. Sorry, but that vest is probably too big. We've got smaller sizes that might fit better. More comfortable for, female body types. His tone was earnest, not mocking, just awkward and trying to be helpful in a way that somehow made it worse. This one's fine, Jordan said. But it's a large. You're probably more like a... It's fine. She walked away before he could finish, ignoring the scattered laughter from Vance's corner of the room. The live fire range was a sprawling complex of shoot houses and urban facades designed to simulate real-world combat environments. Jordan had run courses like this a dozen times, some with far higher stakes than training ammunition. The first group went through the scenario. A simulated hostage rescue in a 2-story structure with multiple rooms, moving targets, and non-combatant pop-ups that would fail you instantly if you shot them. It was sloppy, too slow, too loud, too predictable. The assault team bunched up in fatal funnels, failed to clear corners properly, and shot 2 hostages by mistake. The cadre tore them apart in the after-action review. The second group was better, but not by much. Jordan watched from the observation tower with the other instructors and a handful of senior students. She made notes on her tablet, angles of approach, room clearing sequences, communication failures. So, what do you think? The question came from Captain Reeves, the officer in charge of the training program. He was late 30s, ranger tabbed, and had the kind of face that looked like it had been chiseled from granite by someone who was really angry at granite. I think they're executing doctrine, Jordan said carefully, but doctrine assumes a certain level of baseline competence that isn't there yet. Reeves raised an eyebrow. Harsh. Honest. Fair enough. He glanced at his roster. You up for running the course yourself? Give them something to aim for? Jordan considered. She'd been planning to wait until tomorrow, but this worked too. Sure. When? Now, if you're ready. Show these guys how it's done. Down on the range floor, Vance overheard the conversation. His voice carried up to the tower. Oh, this should be good. $20 says she shoots a hostage in the first 30 seconds. You're on, Chen said. Jordan ignored them. She descended the tower stairs, checked her equipment one final time, and approached the start line. The range safety officer, a grizzled sergeant first class with a face like a catcher's mitt, gave her the brief. 2 hostages, 4 to 6 hostile targets, unknown number of non-combatants. Rules of engagement. Positively identify threats before engaging. Negligent discharge or blue-on-blue results in automatic failure. Time limit is 3 minutes. Questions? No, Sergeant. Good luck, Staff Sergeant. Jordan didn't need luck. She needed physics, geometry, and muscle memory drilled so deep it operated below conscious thought. The buzzer sounded. She moved. Part 4. Reaper. What happened next would be reviewed, analyzed, and debated by the cadre for weeks afterward. Jordan flowed through the shoot house like water finding the path of least resistance. She didn't run. Running was loud, unstable, and burned energy. She moved at a fast walk, her rifle up and ready, her eyes processing information faster than conscious thought. First room. Single hostile, AK-47, standing over a hostage. 2 rounds, center mass before he could bring the weapon to bear. The suppressed M4 coughed twice. Thup, thup. and the target dropped. Clear. Second room, 2 hostages. 1 hostile using a hostage as a shield. Difficult shot. Jordan took it anyway. A single round that threaded between the hostage's shoulder and neck, impacting the hostile's cranial vault. The target dropped. The hostage was unmarked. Clear. Stairwell, ambush position. Hostile at the top of the stairs with height advantage. Jordan didn't hesitate. She angled her approach, used the wall for cover, and put 3 rounds into the target before he could acquire her. Clear. Second floor. 3 rooms, unknown configuration. She cleared them methodically, moving in a pattern that kept her away from fatal funnels and gave her maximum angles of fire with minimum exposure. Room 1. Non-combatant. She held fire, cleared past. Room 2. 2 hostiles, close quarters. She engaged both in under a second. 4 rounds total, all hits. Room 3. Final hostage, 2 hostiles. 1 hostile was armed with a pistol, the other with an edged weapon. Jordan put 2 in the gunman first. Always neutralize the most dangerous threat. Then transition to the knife wielder. 2 more rounds. Clear. Total time, 1 minute, 47 seconds. Total rounds fired, 15. Total hits, 15. 0 hostages shot. 0 non-combatants engaged. Perfect score. The range fell absolutely silent. Jordan cleared her weapon, safed it, and walked back to the start line. Her breathing was barely elevated. Her hands were steady. The RSO stared at his stopwatch like it had personally betrayed him. Jesus Christ, he muttered. What the hell did I just watch? Up in the observation tower, Captain Reeves was rewinding the camera footage, his expression somewhere between impressed and disturbed. Vance stood frozen, his mouth half open, his brain trying to process what his eyes had just seen. That was... Chen trailed off. He had no words. Rodriguez just shook his head slowly. Holy shit. The other students were equally stunned. Some looked impressed. Some looked intimidated. A few looked like they were reevaluating some fundamental assumptions about the world. Jordan handed her rifle back to the RSO and walked toward the tower stairs. Vance found his voice. It came out smaller than usual. Where did you... Jordan stopped, looked at him. Her expression was calm, almost gentle. 14 compounds, she said quietly. 18 months. Helmand Province. You run enough missions, you get good at it. Or you die. She continued walking. Behind her, Vance stood rooted to the spot, his $20 forgotten, his confidence shattered like dropped glass. Part 5. Reassessment. That evening, Captain Reeves called an instructor meeting in the TOC, the Tactical Operations Center. Jordan sat at the long conference table with the other cadre members, a mix of combat veterans and senior NCOs who'd been teaching this course for years. Reeves pulled up the video of Jordan's run on the main screen. All right, let's break this down. Staff Sergeant Cross, walk us through your decision-making process. For the next hour, Jordan deconstructed her performance. She explained angles of approach, discussed sight lines and cover, analyzed threat priority, and demonstrated how small adjustments in positioning could reduce exposure time by critical seconds. The other instructors listened with the focus of students taking notes from a master class. Sergeant First Class Kowalski, the senior small arms instructor, spoke up. The shot in room 2, hostage as shield scenario. That's a gamble, isn't it? Most doctrine says don't take that shot. Most doctrine assumes you're not confident in your ability to make the shot, Jordan replied. I was confident. I'd made similar shots under worse conditions. Risk assessment said take it. And if you'd missed, I wouldn't have taken it. It was said with such complete certainty that Kowalski just nodded. Reeves leaned back in his chair. Okay, here's the situation. Our pass rate on this course has been hovering around 40%. Students are failing because they're executing by-the-book doctrine that doesn't account for real-world variables. They're rigid, predictable, slow. He looked at Jordan. I want you to redesign the training program. Use your experience. Teach them the way you were taught, the way that kept you alive downrange. Can you do that? Jordan considered. This was more than just a week-long guest instructor gig. This was rewriting doctrine, challenging institutional assumptions, and putting her methods up against decades of established practice. Yes, sir, she said. I can do that. Good. You start tomorrow. Full authority over training methods and curriculum. The students are yours. As the meeting broke up, Kowalski approached her. For what it's worth, Cross, that was the most technically proficient CQB run I've seen in 22 years. And I've watched Delta guys run this course. Jordan nodded. Appreciate that, Sergeant. You know the students are going to push back, right? Some of them anyway. Guys like Vance don't like being shown up. I know. You need backup, you call me. I don't tolerate that shit. Thanks, but I can handle it. Kowalski grinned. Yeah, I bet you can. Part 6, Day 1. The next morning, Jordan stood in front of 63 students in the main briefing room. The Arizona heat was already building outside, but inside, the air conditioning kept it tolerably cool. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. Most of you failed yesterday's exercise, she began. Some of you shot hostages. Some of you got yourselves killed by bunching up in fatal funnels. Some of you were so slow that, in a real scenario, the hostages would be dead before you cleared the first room. The room was silent. Some students looked defensive. Others looked curious. Today, we're starting over. Forget everything you think you know about room clearing. Forget the doctrine you learned in basic infantry school. We're going to rebuild your approach from the ground up, using methods that actually work in combat. Vance raised his hand. His tone was carefully neutral, but there was an edge underneath. Staff Sergeant, with respect, the doctrine we've been using is based on decades of combat experience from multiple conflicts. Are you saying all of that is wrong? Jordan met his eyes. I'm saying that doctrine is a starting point, not gospel. It's written by people who need to teach the lowest common denominator. But you're not the lowest common denominator. You're advanced students, which means you can learn advanced methods. She clicked to the next slide, footage from her run the previous day, frozen at the moment she'd taken the hostage shield shot. This shot. Most of you wouldn't take it. Doctrine says don't take it, but I took it, and I made it, because I practiced it 1,000 times and I knew my limits. That's what we're going to do this week. Push you past doctrine and teach you to know your own limits. She clicked again. Another image. A diagram of the shoot house from an overhead perspective, with movement paths marked in different colors. We're going to study angles, physics, geometry, how to use architecture as an advantage, how to move so that you're never silhouetted, never backlit, never exposed longer than you have to be. Another click. A photo of a compound in Afghanistan, partially destroyed, bullet-scarred walls and blown-out windows. This is where I learned. 14 compounds over 18 months. Every mission taught me something. Sometimes the lesson was written in my teammates' blood. I'd prefer you learn from my mistakes rather than making your own. The room had changed. The defensiveness was gone, replaced by attention. Real attention. Even Vance was leaning forward. Questions? A hand went up in the back. Sergeant Barnes, Army Infantry, 2 deployments to Iraq. Staff Sergeant, how do we practice making shots like that hostage scenario? That seems like something that requires actual combat to learn. It does and it doesn't, Jordan said. You can't replicate the stress, but you can replicate the technical skill. We'll set up scenarios that force you to take difficult shots under time pressure. You'll fail. A lot. And then you'll stop failing. That's called learning. Another hand. Corporal Martinez, Marine Corps. Fresh from a deployment to Syria. You said you learned from mistakes. What was your worst mistake? Jordan didn't hesitate. Second deployment. Compound in Marja. I moved too fast, didn't clear a corner properly, and walked into a room with a hostile at close range. He got a shot off before I got mine. Missed me by 3 inches. hit my team leader instead. The room went dead quiet. My team leader survived. Armor stopped it. But if it had been 3 inches to the left, he'd be dead, and it would have been my fault. I never made that mistake again. She let that hang in the air. Combat is unforgiving. Training can't replicate that, but it can teach you to minimize mistakes. That's what we're here to do. Now get your gear. We're going to the range. Part 7. Evolution. Over the next 3 days, Jordan rebuilt the way they moved, thought, and fought. She started with the basics: angles of approach, proper spacing, communication. She ran them through drills until the movements became automatic. Then she added stress, time limits, moving targets, unexpected variables. She was a demanding instructor, not cruel, but utterly uncompromising. When someone screwed up, she stopped the drill, explained exactly what went wrong, and made them run it again, and again, and again, until they got it right. Some students struggled, some excelled. Vance, to his credit, swallowed his pride and absorbed every lesson like a man dying of thirst. He ran drills until his hands bled. He asked questions. He listened. On the 3rd day, Jordan ran them through a modified version of the hostage scenario she'd demonstrated. This time, it was a force-on-force exercise using simunition, paint-marking rounds that hurt like hell but wouldn't kill you. Vance's team went first. They used Jordan's approach vectors. They moved the way she'd taught them, fast but controlled, using cover, communicating with hand signals to minimize noise. They cleared the first floor in 40 seconds with 0 casualties. Second floor, they split into 2 elements, clearing simultaneously from opposite ends. Textbook execution. The hostile using a hostage as a shield tried the same tactic that had worked against previous teams. Vance took the shot. It was perfect. Threaded past the hostage, center mass hit on the target. The hostage was unmarked. Total time, 2 minutes, 12 seconds. 0 friendly casualties, 0 hostages shot. When they exited the shoot house, Vance pulled off his face shield. His expression was a mixture of exhaustion and something that might have been pride. Jordan was waiting at the start line. "Nice work," she said. Vance nodded. "Thanks. He paused, seemed to be wrestling with something. "I wanted to apologize for the stuff I said when you first got here." That was out of line. Jordan studied him for a moment. The apology was genuine, she could tell, but it didn't erase the disrespect. It didn't undo the assumption that she didn't belong. Still, it was something. "Apology accepted," she said. "Just don't let it happen again." "It won't." "Good. Now go hydrate. You've got another run in 30 minutes. By the end of the week, the pass rate on the combat readiness assessment had jumped from 42% to 79%. The students who'd struggled the most at the beginning were now running courses with confidence and precision. Captain Reeves submitted a formal commendation for Jordan's personnel file. Sergeant Major Orozco told her she was welcome back any time. On her last day, Vance approached her one final time. "Hey, Staff Sergeant, I just wanted to say, you changed the way I think about this stuff. About combat, about tactics, about a lot of things." Jordan slung her ruck over her shoulder. "Good. That's the point. Will you be coming back? To teach again?" "Maybe. Depends on where they send me." Vance extended his hand. Jordan shook it. "Well, if you do, I'd like to take your course again. There's a lot more I want to learn." "Keep practicing," Jordan said. "You'll do fine." She walked toward the parking lot, where a dusty SUV was waiting to take her to the airfield. Behind her, 63 students had learned a lesson that would stick with them for the rest of their careers. Skill has no gender. Competence has no prerequisites except hard work and humility. And the deadliest operators are often the ones you underestimate. Part 8. Montana. Jordan Cross drove north for 2 days, through desert and mountains, until the landscape turned into the rolling high country of Wyoming and Montana. She'd been gone for 8 months, 2 deployments back-to-back, then the assignment at Fort Lowell. Home was a small ranch outside of Livingston, Montana, where her parents still lived. Her father was in the barn when she pulled up, working on a tractor engine that had probably been broken since the Carter administration. "Heard you made some waves down in Arizona," he said, not looking up from the engine block. Jordan leaned against the barn door. "How'd you hear about that?" "Got a call from an old Marine buddy. His nephew was in your course. Said you put on a hell of a show." "Just did my job." Her father finally looked up, wiping his hands on a greasy rag. He studied her for a long moment, the way he used to when she was a kid, coming home with a trophy from a shooting competition. "You do good work, Jordan. Your mother and I are proud." It was about as emotional as her father got. "Thanks, Dad." He went back to the engine. "There's elk stew on the stove. Your mother made enough to feed a platoon, so you better be hungry." Jordan smiled. "Always am." That night, she sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the stars come out over the mountains. The air was cool and clean, so different from the dust and heat of Arizona. Her phone buzzed. A text from Captain Reeves. "Got a request from Fort Benning. They want you to run their Ranger instructor course redesign. Interested?" Jordan stared at the message for a long time. She thought about Vance and his apology. About the students who'd struggled at first and then excelled. About the cadre members who'd listened to her methods and changed the way they taught. She thought about all the women who'd come after her, the ones who'd faced the same dismissals, the same assumptions, the same bullshit. Someone had to prove that skill had no gender, again and again and again, until people stopped questioning it. Jordan typed her response. "When do I start?" She hit send, finished her coffee, and went inside. The mission continued.